Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is so good to see so many faces out there, and I can see a lot of you. And this is going to be a very unusual Tardeada, but I am here, Miriam Hernandez, again, to welcome you to our annual Tardeada virtually this time, our opportunity from the Museum of Social Justice to highlight just tremendous works that are being done out there in the field by really great warriors for justice. Again, I'm Miriam Hernandez from ABC7 Eyewitness News. I've been with you in past years and really looking forward to this adventure. We are challenged this year. We are challenged this year because we cannot all be together under the same roof. At the same time, it is a remarkable opportunity to be trying this new technology in which we can still be together virtually. So with that, I want to take you through a little bit of show and tell. Your goodie bags are very, very important for this event. Now, we'll begin by using the candle. So if you can find an ignition source, a lighter or a match, this candle is going to be important for our blessing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pastora VJ Cruz Baez. She is the pastor for La Plaza United Methodist Church, and she's going to lead us in a special spiritual centering for this event. Pastora.
Thank you, Miriam. If you have your candle, please take it in your hands. And if you haven't taken it out of your gift bag, please do so now. And join me as we express respect to those who inhabit the ancestral homelands. Today, together, in the words of Dr. Melina Abdullah, we remember and acknowledge the labor and life of our ancestors. Let then this be our prayer. This land that we inhabit is physically situated in the original ancestral homelands of the Tomba and the Chumash people. We pay respect to the Tomba and all the indigenous people, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the homeland and throughout their historical diaspora. We pay homage to those who were stolen from Africa, placed in bondage, falsely named as chattel, and forced into labor, who were called slave, but never submitted as such, who have always been fully human, with an unbroken connection to the divine and to each other. We honor our African ancestors, for the still unpaid labor which built what is now the Americas. To both our indigenous and African forebears, we commit to be continued struggle for liberation and reparations, for it's only through freedom and justice we truly give honor. Aho Ashe, así sea, let it be so.
Thank you so much, Pastora. So we have to acknowledge how different things are this year. The Tardeada is certainly different today. This event was organized with respect to our tradition, but embracing new opportunities. It is now more intimate. Now we can see each other face to face instead of somebody being on a stage and looking out at the crowd. And so you know how we usually have a social hour at the Pico House before our event? Well, this time we'll be mingling a little bit differently, but we'll still have our wine and our hors d'oeuvres. So I invite you now to pour yourself a little wine. If you have any snacks, bring those out too. and just enjoy this time when we can be together and enjoy our company, and also look back on the things that the museum has accomplished in the past year, and open our eyes wide to what can be accomplished in the future. So right now, we're going to recreate that sense of the moment, recalling Tardeadas of the past. One way that we can kind of exchange communication is by putting any messages in the chat box. So we ask all of our guests to please participate by commenting in the chat box throughout the event. And today we're just going to go with the flow. We've never done this before, but this will be a chance to just kind of experiment and just see where things happen. This has become a year of adapting, adjusting, and making many decisions. So we can't stay the same, right? How do we go forward? Well, carrying the torch for the museum is Keith Rice. He's the chairman of the board for the Museum of Social Justice, and he is the historian and archivist for CSUN's Tom and Ethel Bradley Center. Keith, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Miriam. The museum is adjusting to the realities of the pandemic at the same time that we remain responsive to other important realities, like the racial social justice protests happening across our city and nation. One reality of the pandemic is that the museum doors have been physically closed since March, but since then we have still been very active planning our next exhibition. You'll hear more about this exhibition later in the program. Whenever the county and city give us the green light to open back up, we'll be ready to welcome you back inside once again. In the meantime, we've increased our presence on social media. If you're wondering how to get involved in the various social justice movements happening throughout Greater Los Angeles, check our Instagram or Facebook feeds. You'll see a link to them in the chat box. Another way that the museum has continued its work during our physical closure is through our focus on the leadership development of young people. You'll meet Audrey Labatique later in the program. She is our intern through the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture. We also have a number of interns from Cal State LA working on various projects. Let me pronounce her name correctly, Labatique. As you know, all this work takes resources. I've been blessed to be able to support the museum financially, and I'd like to invite all of you to do the same. I give to the museum because it's dedicated to telling the stories of people who are often overlooked by mainstream institutions. Some are even vilified by some segments of society. It is my privilege to work with an amazing board of directors, interns, staff, and volunteers to bring you these stories. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. Just a little tricky trying to unmute so many different things. Thank you so much, Keith. This event highlights the work of the museum and the need to support it. So inside your goodie bag is this card. Look for this card, and you see on it different ways that you can give. You can give through Venmo, you can give with a credit card, you can give through a check. And another really good way of giving is becoming a member. So through this process, through this event, we're going to be checking in on our fundraising and how well we're doing. So you can also look at the chat, at the chat box, and in there is a link to the museum donation page. And so check in with that, and don't be shy. Be generous. Our first honoree is Dr. Melina Abdullah. She has many titles, and then there is the one she's most known for, which is activist and co-founder of the Black Lives Movement here in Los Angeles. She speaks from her knowledge of history and what she sees in the present and her vision for the future. She is a professor at Cal State LA, a former chair of the Pan-African Studies Department. She has served in the LA County Human Relations Commission, her scholarly work informs her activism, her unrelenting fight against oppression. What she advocates has made many people, some people, perhaps many people, uncomfortable. That shows her bravery, her courage, and her willingness to speak truth to power. She talks a lot about it on her Facebook. She holds a class on Black Power through the Freedom Campus, which does a live class every week. And she also has a show on KPFK radio called Beautiful Struggle. Let's now hear more from Dr. Melina Abdullah.
So I'm deeply humbled to receive this honor, and this is a moment like none of us have ever experienced, when the world has cracked wide open and our most radical imaginings can come to pass if we work for them. And so in this moment, it's really important that we understand how much we need to invest in ushering in all of our vision for the world, for what social justice, for what racial justice can mean. This is a moment where we can't shy away from saying things like defund the police and reimagine public safety. It's a moment when we're calling on everyone to use our voices to uplift what is true, what is right, and what is righteous, to use our bodies, virtually or in person, to make sure that we topple unjust systems, and to use our resources to invest in the things that actually create safe, peaceful, and just society, including using your money to support places like the Museum of Social Justice. When we think about what's at stake, it's everything. Everything is on the line. The freedom of Black people, and by extension all people, the world as we know it, can be fundamentally transformed. We have to step into our sacred duty and do the work to make Black lives matter, to make this world what we want our children to inherit, to make it more beautiful and beneficial than when we inherited it. And so it is. Thank you. Safe, peaceful, and just society, including using your money to support places like the Museum of Social Justice. When we think about what's at stake, it's everything. Everything is on the line. The freedom of Black people, and by extension all people, the world as we know it, can be fundamentally transformed. We have to step into our sacred duty and do the work to make Black lives matter, to make this world what we want our children to inherit, to make it more beautiful and beneficial than when we inherited it. And so it is. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Some of our honorees are greeting this event from their living rooms, but Dr. Abdullah is very, very busy on weekends, and she's headed down to Long Beach for a rally there. So we salute her as she's on her way, and also thank her for her support of the museum. In addition to the sponsors of this evening's program and all of you who purchased tickets, there is another way to support the museum that I mentioned earlier, and that is through memberships. Now, there are various ways to purchase a membership, and there is a level for everybody, starting with students going up to sustaining members. So why do we love memberships? We'll hear now from Melissa Stone, a museum supporter who has chosen to become a member. Melissa.
Thank you. And thank you, Jennifer, and the team at the Museum of Social Justice for this wonderful event, and all you do to tell often neglected stories and share the history of the diverse people of Los Angeles. The experiences presented by the museum are grounded in our local community, but representative of so many stories across the country, and give a voice that goes far beyond Los Angeles. I'm honored to speak on behalf of museum membership today. Supporting the museum was an easy decision. It is a place to expand your understanding of the world in which we live and hear voices that do not get enough of a platform. The Museum of Social Justice puts faces to moments in history and provides artists opportunities to let their work commentate, inspire, and affect change. Unfortunately, we are unable to gather together this year due to COVID-19 and the massive impact it has had on all of our lives. 2020 has been a year that has shed new light on the inequality our country faces, and the Museum of Social Justice has been a beacon for information and education. We are all indebted to this institution for the leadership it provides and the community it cultivates. I ask you today to strengthen your commitment to this community. If you are not a member, please become one. If you are, please support at a higher level. Now is the time to stand with the museum and the vital work it accomplishes each and every day. Thank you.
There we go. Now please take out your program. This program is different than our previous programs. It has a new feature, which I think is just fascinating, because our honorees have offered recommended readings, books, places to patronize, and things that they believe will inspire you to learn more about the various issues that they've been involved in. There's, for example, Dr. Abdullah recommends Issa Wan books in Los Angeles and Malik books in the Crenshaw Mall. And our other honoree, Chancee Martorell, gives us a whole map of Thai Town. So these are little insights from our honorees that will help you learn more about the things that they've been involved with. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about Chancee Martorell. She is the director of the Thai Community Development Center, an organization she founded in 1994, a year before the liberation of enslaved workers in El Monte. Now, this was a huge story nationwide. Chancee and the Thai CDC have worked on human rights cases involving more than 400 victims of human trafficking. And this event in El Monte, for which the exhibit is focused, is the launch point for a whole movement and a whole sense of awareness about human trafficking right here in our own backyard. Now, the Thai CDC doesn't work just on human trafficking cases. They also develop affordable housing, they promote small businesses, and they work on other neighborhood revitalization projects, including designating the first Thai town in all of the United States. Hear now more about Chancee Martorell.
Hi, I am just so thrilled and so humbled by this honor that had been bestowed on me, the Social Justice Award that the Museum of Social Justice has decided to present to me. I am truly gratified to know just how much the Museum of Social Justice care about social justice, hence it's in their name. And I have done social justice work all my life, my professional life for close to 30 years, my adult life, and to be presented with an award in this name just speaks volumes to the work that I do at the Thai Community Development Center, because we have always been fighting for social justice, and on the occasion, no less, of the 25th anniversary of the El Monte Thai garment slavery case. This case is really a case that opened up everyone's eyes to the gravest injustice of all, and that's the exploitation of human beings for the purpose of forced labor. And the workers have been freed now for 25 years, and it's important to know that, unfortunately, sadly, the case was just the tip of the iceberg, because till this present day, the scourge of human trafficking and modern-day slavery still exists and continues to grow unabated. And I'd like for this award to really be a rallying cry for us to fight and to dedicate ourselves to combating this heinous crime. We cannot allow human beings to be stripped of their fundamental human rights and their dignity and their freedom. And so I'm just so touched, and I'm just so humbled and honored to be given this award. But I really dedicate this award more than anything to the struggles around the world that's being enacted every day in the name of justice, and to all those people who are relentless in their fight to pursue justice. And TICC at our center, we will continue that fight. We have not seen an end in sight, so that struggle will continue, and we are so happy that the Museum of Social Justice exists to really just magnify to the world what's going on, because they have a venue where people can come to see what's going on in the world, and how people every day are struggling to bring about more equity and more justice and affect social change. So with that, I thank the Museum of Social Justice. I thank their staff. I thank Jennifer Gutierrez, the executive director, and I thank their board of directors for this amazing honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chancee. And this again was an incredible story in El Monte. And this is not self-promotion, but I did a story with her about the 25th anniversary, marking that day in the 1990s when agents went in, actually just labor investigators got a search warrant finally to see what was going on in that building. There were very, very few clues that anything was happening there that was untoward. But with the search warrant, they went in and found an incredible scene. And these were dozens, scores of people living on the floors, sleeping at the foot of their sewing machines. They were working 18 hours a day, just incredible conditions. And they could not leave. There was a gunman, a person that was armed at the door. They did not dare try to escape. So you're invited to learn more about this entire situation. Now, back to the goodie bag. We have this, a surprised item inside. So with us is Audrey Labatique, a student at Oberlin College, and she is the museum's intern through the LA County Department of Arts and Culture. And she's going to tell you about what's inside the box.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you, even if it is virtually. I hope you were able to pick up your goodie bags from the museum. And if you look inside, as was just said, you'll find a quilting kit, which includes a square of fabric, a couple pieces of scrap fabric, thread, and a needle. In order to foster a sense of community during these trying times, we at the museum hoped we could collaborate on a creative quilting project, inspired in part by the quilts made by Thai trafficking survivors and exhibited at the 20th anniversary of the El Monte case. We encourage you to do this task at your own leisure and get creative with your designs. Instructions for submitting your square to the museum's ongoing project, either virtually or physically, are inside the brochure included with your quilt. We hope you can join us in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, just trying to keep up now, talking to Jennifer about some developments with our fundraising. One of our generous board members issued a challenge, a match, And with that challenge, now more than $500 was raised just by that one challenge. So please keep on giving. And if you want to offer a challenge yourself, you're welcome to it. It would be we'd be so grateful for it. Now, let's check in with we've checked in with the afternoon's fundraising. And now we want to talk about our next honoree. This is a little bit of a surprise because now we're going international. Our next honoree is Joy Prim. She is a United Methodist missionary serving in Hong Kong, where she works with migrant workers in crisis, educating them on their legal rights and helping them regain their dignity. Prior to her move to Hong Kong, Joy worked with the Filipino community at the Filipino Migrant Center, providing direct services and advocacy on human rights issues in California and beyond. Joy's work for justice springs from her deep faith and the influence of her mother and grandmother, two strong United Methodist women. Let's hear Joy Prim in her own words.
Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending wherever in the world you are joining us from today. And greetings from here in Hong Kong on this beautiful Monday morning. Let me first say thank you to the board of the Museum of Social Justice, Jennifer and Dominica, for recognizing me as one of the social justice heroes this year. It was truly a shock to get the email from Jennifer not long after I had arrived here in Hong Kong to letting me know that I had been chosen. And in that first email, Jennifer asked me if I'd be willing to share a bit about my work in fighting human trafficking. And as I reflected, I couldn't quite figure out just what to share. I thought I could share about how I had just learned how the Hong Kong government legislators had pushed so hard for over 5 years to get some form of protection for victims of trafficking here in the region. And so the legislation had been passed to protect possible future victims, as the Hong Kong government denies that human trafficking even takes place here in the city, turning a blind eye to the many victims of labor trafficking from migrant domestic worker communities, especially from Indonesia. Thought about how I could share the stories of some of the nearly 60 survivors that I had worked with at the Filipino Migrant Center, and then almost 65 that the center has served in their 10 years of existence. How many of them had found us as their last resort, knowing something was wrong, but not knowing what to do about it. Or how the survivors worked so hard to educate the South Bay and wider Los Angeles Filipino and non-Filipino communities on what is labor trafficking, that it is part of human trafficking, and how prevalent it truly is in the Filipino community. But this didn't quite feel right either. And the more I reflected, the more I realized that I wanted to focus as a young person who has answered God's call into social justice ministry full time on the importance of understanding the intersections of the struggles for justice and how that understanding has to be rooted in love, for love translates all languages. And it is this grounding that has helped shape who I am and who I was to become in my time in Los Angeles, a grounding whose roots go back to the spiritual collective that is the 580 Cafe at UCLA and the Filipino organizing community where I found a home. As 2020 began and I watched the pandemic hit Hong Kong first in January, leaving so many migrant workers here stranded, vulnerable to human traffickers, or even just denied the ability to have their one day off per week, because how does one rest and the call to work from home when one's workplace is also their home, as the Hong Kong government mandates that all domestic workers live in their employers' homes? Over and over again, my community here told me, here are our lessons. and let yourself be loved there in Los Angeles. And his life transitioned online in Southern California. It was these lessons of months of experience in Hong Kong that I had to continue in building community, supporting each other, and safely getting out correct information. And as I shared these lessons, I also saw how fast the migrant and immigrant communities were able to adapt through the tears, the struggles, the pain, but also the love and care for each other that shone through, and each other as people in each other's communities, for whether it was the fight to get UCLA to provide relief to their undocumented DACA AB 540 or international students, the resistance of rising fascism back in home countries from the Philippines to El Salvador, where governments were using lockdowns in the name of the pandemic to justify militarization and vilification of human rights defenders, or the fight of the protection of immigration benefits in the United States, such as the T visa or refugee status, and the protection and the struggle of the thousands stranded at our borders awaiting their court dates in conditions that are nowhere close to what the WHO is calling for in this pandemic. And in the midst of this, what some don't realize is I actually moved to West LA, moving in with 2 student leaders, community organizers, and dear friends from Anak Bayan at UCLA. And then in this home that we built of mutual love for the people and for each other, with understandings of our personal realities and commitments to make it work, I was reminded that in doing social justice work, when we live into the uncomfortabilities of the struggles and the intersections for the work for justice and peace, we can achieve the unthinkable. For our house, it was becoming just that, a house, but even more so becoming kasamas, becoming siblings. To this day, regularly in touch with each other, doing life together, even though life now falls on both sides of the Pacific, as our hearts beat for the same dreams of justice and peace. And I began to reflect that this journey doesn't stop with my flatmates. For if we were all to come together across issues of social justice, embrace these uncomfortable intersections, like so many young people are doing in Los Angeles already, we were to embrace the reality that human trafficking in immigrant communities would almost be an unneeded conversation if we address the root issues in their home countries of basic work, living wages, safe places to live, and the direct impact on the land of both United States companies as well as the U.S. military and seizing resources to benefit not those countries, but us in the United States of America. Instead, letting the people there keep their resources in their country to support themselves. Then families would not be forced to separate and migrate by the need to survive, and instead could work safely and live with their loved ones. So I challenge you, let us learn directly from those directly impacted. Let us give them the leadership and the reins to lead the movements going forward, following that leadership. And I know one day, in the not so distant future, we will all live in a world where families are not broken up by the need to survive. And we tell our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren of how human trafficking was the battle that we fought and the battle that we were able to win for justice and peace for all of God's children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. There were so many good messages in your talk there, especially about relinquishing control. Sometimes we feel that we have the answers, but you really have to hand it to the people you're working with, and let them become the leaders because they know the pathway. We are so happy to see you in person now. Let's all wave to Joy, and I believe Chancee, are you there?
Greetings from Hong Kong, everybody.
Chancee, we say hello to you as well. Thank you so much. And we are just loving all Yay. And we're just loving all the comments that you're offering for both Chancee and Joy and Melina. It's great to have that positive affirmation that you're there, that you're engaged, and that you have something to offer back to these honorees. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, before we show you the preview of the museum's newest exhibition, we want to acknowledge the many people that made this afternoon possible. And to do that, I'd like to introduce the museum's executive director, Jennifer Gutierrez. Jennifer.
Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you all. I'm enjoying reading the chat box as you comment on the honorees and congratulate them on their work. This has been an inspiring afternoon. Thank you so much. I want to especially thank some of the sponsors that are joining us today and who have made this event possible and who in turn make the museum's work possible. First, I want to thank the First United Methodist Church of Los Angeles for lending us their tech crew. So the videos that you see, the exhibition preview that you'll see in a bit, all of that was done by the team at First United Methodist Church of Los Angeles. So thank you to them. I want to thank West District Union and the Living Into the Future Foundation of the California Pacific Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church for their sponsorship and for their ongoing support. I also want to thank United Methodist Communications, or UMCOM. If you came and picked up your gift bag from us the last couple of days, you might have seen us wearing our United Methodist Stand Against Racism t-shirts, and those were a gift from United Methodist Communications as well as their sponsorship of this event. We want to thank Byron and Deanne Hayes, who are joining us today. As always, they have been some of our most consistent supporters since the museum opened. So thank you, Byron. There he is. It's so good to see you. And thank you for your support as always. We also want to thank the Justice and Compassion Essential Ministry team of the California Pacific Conference. There's David Farley, who leads that team. Thank you so much for their sponsorship and for the work that you do on behalf of social justice. We also want to thank the Tom and Ethel Bradley Center that you already met Keith as the historian and archivist. Jose Luis Benavides is the director there, and so we want to thank them as well. Thank you so much for your support of the museum and your partnership on many of our exhibitions. We also want to thank the United Methodist Women of First United Methodist Church of Los Angeles. I know Sarah's with us this afternoon, so we want to thank them for their support. And we also want to thank, we know those ladies do some powerful work themselves on behalf of social justice, so thank you for your work as well. We want to thank Teleku for their sponsorship. They've sponsored us for many years, so thank you. We want to thank Kate Unger and Jose Luis Benavides, two of our board members, for their sponsorship. There's Kate. Thank you so much. We want to thank Aida Feria and her husband, John Arredondo, for their sponsorship. There you are, Aida. Thank you so much. Looking good. And Monica Rodriguez, thank you so much. Also a person who has sponsored us year after year. And so thank you for that consistent support, Monica. There's other sponsors that you will see in your program book listed there, but we want to thank you all for making this event possible and for the work of the museum possible. I want to mention a couple other people by name. I mentioned the tech crew for First United Methodist Church of Los Angeles. So all the muting and unmuting and video playing that's going on for this is being done by Stephen Foltz, who is the creative director at First United Methodist Church Los Angeles. So thank you, Stephen, for that work. And thank you, Dominica, who's our assistant curator at the museum. She's also doing a lot of that tech work as well, and always does a lot of behind the scenes work. So thank you to the two of them. I want to acknowledge our board members. So some of the people you see on the screen who have that lovely church building in the background in the social justice logo, many of those folk are our board members. And so we thank them for all the work that they do on behalf of the museum. Okay, and lastly, as I'm thanking people, I just want to thank everybody who's joining us this afternoon. I know if you're like me, one more Zoom doesn't necessarily sound like the best way to spend a Sunday afternoon, but I hope that we've changed that perception by having inspiring talks from our honorees, and also the exhibition preview that you still get to see. So thank you so much for joining us, because this really is a community event, and we're so glad that you could be here with us and try this new thing with us as well. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Jennifer, for your leadership and your coordination of this event and everything you do for the museum. Now to spotlight the exhibition itself. It is the Thai El Monte Garment Workers exhibition. And if you haven't heard this story, it is just incredible. It really has the makings of being a blockbuster suspense thriller. Now, El Monte was the first recognized case of modern day slavery in the United States, leading to the passage of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act in the year 2000. It was a long time coming. This exhibition tells the story of the case from the perspective of the survivors. Now, for those of you that have joined us for previous Tardeadas, you know that after the presentations, we all walk across the plaza to the museum to see the current exhibition. Well, and there's always dessert and coffee there too. So even though we cannot physically take that walk today, we want to experience something of that with some dessert here, which is in your goodie bag, some homemade cookies. So please take these out, enjoy. Oh, chocolate. Please enjoy them while we hear about the new exhibition at the museum.
Shortly before dawn on the morning of August 2nd, 1995, uniformed police officers kicked in the front doors of several duplexes in the sleepy, working-class Los Angeles suburb of El Monte. The houses, built all in a row on a single lot, were nearly identical to each other. In fact, with their nondescript features and beige motif, they were nearly indistinguishable from the typical homes found throughout the region's more prosperous suburban subdivisions, except for one unusual feature: a tall brick wall that surrounded the entire compound, with the rim covered entirely by barbed wire and metal spikes that faced inward. The only entrance or exit to the compound was a gated driveway with a guard station that seldom ever opened, except to let in or out commercial trucks laden with fabric or finished garments. On the day after the raid, the entire world woke up to screaming headlines from national and world media proclaiming the appalling and bewildering discovery of modern-day slavery in America. The compound was in fact a clandestine garment factory. 72 Thai nationals had been held for up to 7 years as indentured workers by a family-owned firm that required them to work over 18 hours per day, 7 days per week, sewing garments under threat of violence or retaliation to their families at home. The workers slept on the floor in crowded rooms upstairs and worked in a makeshift garment factory on the ground floor. They purchased their personal supplies from a company store in one of the units that charged exorbitant prices for basic household items such as soap and toothpaste. They were forbidden to leave the compound or use a telephone. Their correspondence home was monitored. The sole purpose of their existence was to produce garments and pay off their trip to the U.S. so they could send a few dollars home to their families. In the best of circumstances, their actual pay amounted to as little as $1.80 per hour. This exhibition tells the story of the El Monte Garment Factory, the workers who toiled there, and the campaign for justice that followed in the aftermath of the raid. More importantly, it aims to shed light on the social, political, and economic forces that created El Monte and continue to impact all of us today. Those who lived through the era of the early 90s remember that time for two things in particular: the advent of digital technology and the rise of a new globalized economy. In fact, the two went hand in hand. As computer chips became more and more powerful and computer networks became more sophisticated, captains of industry were no longer subject to the old limitations of time and distance. A decentralized business spread out over many different locations across the globe could be managed in real time from any one of its hubs. The future was here, and it was exciting. During that era, one wondered the new high-tech globalized future would look like and what new possibilities would be created by this novel configuration of global capitalism. The synergy of improved communication and efficiently facilitated by the lightning speed of digital technology would usher in an era unparalleled growth that would provide new opportunities for advancement and prosperity where none had ever existed before. It was during this time that El Monte case broke and provided the public with a rather anachronistic image of global capitalism. The Los Angeles garment industry that spread its wares across the world was connected to the impoverished Isan region of northern Thailand, not by fiber optic cables and software, but by high walls and barbed wire, by isolation and the constant threat of beatings and relentless 18-hour work shifts. Global capitalism in its most sophisticated and advanced form resembled more a cotton plantation of the Old South than a gleaming tower of crystal in a high financial capital of the world. The reality was even more discouraging, because the two were not direct opposites, but integral parts of a single whole. Why? Because the El Monte garment factory was not an aberration that produced itself in isolation. The El Monte factory was a direct result of a system of production devised by the very captains of industry who occupy the crystal towers. They knew what it cost to produce a garment within the constraints of wage and hour laws and simply chose to do otherwise. They knew they could wash their hands of the crime with the plausible deniability afforded by a decentralized manufacturing process, where the dirty business of exploiting workers was outsourced to enterprises like El Monte. If the labor force proved to be too politicized and defiant to be enslaved, a new one could be recruited from a land so distant that they would not have the minimal inkling that what they were experiencing was outside the norm. Ironically, as capital found the last barriers to investment on a global scale removed by digital technology, the workers who generated its wealth found themselves subjugated by the threat of deportation for having violated the very same confines of nationality that capital had simply learned to skip over. Capital had liberated itself of old constraints, but workers had not. Technology was not going to usher in any new opportunities beyond the scant ones that had been granted by the old industrialists of yore. Capitalist systems of production were indeed more advanced, complex, and far-reaching than ever before, but they were run as though the Rockefellers, Carnegies, and Vanderbilts of this world had never left the earth. Wealth was extracted by exploitation on a normal day, and by slavery whenever possible. The only thing new was the speed and efficiency which it could be done, and the convenience of anonymity afforded the slave masters by their increasing remoteness.
Somebody drank my wine. It couldn't have been me. What about you? Did somebody drink your wine too? I hope you have enjoyed this afternoon. And I'm very happy to announce that we have raised just in this event, $1,045. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Amalia. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Kim. You are really a blessing to help this museum in this way. And this doesn't have to be the end for all of you who did not have time to donate or want to do a second round or want to become members. There's still that opportunity. Please keep us in your prayers, keep us in your thoughts, and remember to invite others, your friends, to join us in this campaign. Also, if you have any social media, click on the, any part of this program and send it off to your friends about the exhibition. Share that with them, and always just remember to include Museum of Social Justice. We really want to share the buzz, get the word out there, and just remind people that this exquisite location is there for people who care about the welfare of other people. Now, just as we opened with a moment of spiritual centering, we will now close with a spiritual call to action for a more just world. Here is Yazmin Watkins with a special performance, a special virtual performance. This is an original piece, by the way.
So honored to be here with you all. Greetings, Museum of Social Justice. I have two poems that I wanted to share. I am so honored to be speaking here. The two poems I'm sharing are visions for would-be futures and hopes for what could be. This first piece, as we prepare to go to the polls, I wanted to perform a piece dedicated to Black women, a reminder for why we vote and what's at stake. Waukesha Wilson, who this poem is dedicated to, this first piece, was like LA's Sandra Bland. And if you haven't heard about her story, please spend some time looking her up. Waukesha was one of the 600 plus people whose lives were stolen under our current district attorney's regime. One of the many cases she refused to investigate. As we reimagine justice for women and holding space for women, I wanted to share this piece dreaming of all the possible worlds that Waukesha could have been a part of had she not been stolen from us. And so, Waukesha's poem. On the 1-year anniversary of yet another Black death behind bars, a Black woman is risen. And the voice of her people, she walks in our steps and lives in our movement. We say her name, Waukesha Wilson. We say her name, Waukesha Wilson. Demanding justice now. Knowing Black death and cover-ups still sound the same across this country. From Emmett Till to Sandra Bland, still, we lift her up and make her visible. On the day of yet another Black death behind bars. On the day that yet another Black woman's murder is ruled suicide. On the day the LAPD deems themselves in conduct, we grieve and cry and then dream, because sometimes the dreaming gives us clarity of visions to work towards in the waking. And in my dreams, I pray an alternate universe exists, that somewhere on that timeline, a telephone rings and a mother picks up and passes the phone to her grandson who says, "Come on home, mama." And she does. And she wishes her beloved aunt the happiest of birthdays, and she lives in this timeline. A mother does not sit by a phone and show up to court looking for a daughter that the police would never allow to return. Lord, let there be another universe without the cover-up, without the abuse, the murder, before the red, white, and blue lights signal and flash the end of yet another Black life. Lord, please let there be another timeline where the police who killed Waukesha are held accountable, where the LAPD no longer terrorize our community. Damn, please let there be an alternate universe, and in it a timeline where a mother receives a phone call, and that phone call leads to a court date, and that court date leads to a fair process, whatever that means for this crooked country. And a mother drives her daughter back, and she goes home, unnoosed and free. And God, I pray on this resurrection someday that somewhere a phone rings and a mother goes home to her son. And Black joy is synonymous with a reimagined justice. And instead of prison bars and over-policed states, the community is supported and healed and whole. And on this Resurrection Sunday, we celebrate a life that got to live to her fullest capacity. And on this timeline, the ancestors smile and say, "Well done. Well done. We'll see you in a good long while. But take your time, baby. Take your time." And we do. That first piece particularly I have the joy and honor to organize with Dr. Melina with Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. I serve on the Arts and Culture Committee. And I think about the role that art has to play in movement work and how necessary it is in documenting the stories and telling the stories of our truth. And I think a lot just about how are we showing up in this social justice work? How are we showing up for Black women? How are we protecting Black women, all Black women? Audre Lorde, I love, I'm sure a lot of y'all already know about her, but Audre Lorde once said, some problems we share as women, some we do not. You fear your children will grow up to join the patriarchy and testify against you. We fear our children will be dragged from a car and shot down in the street, and you will turn your backs on the reasons they are dying. And so this last piece that I'd like to share is called A Prayer for Our Someday Children. Again, just thinking about what could be and what can hopefully exist, right? On what we prayerfully fight for when we say Jackie Lacey must go, right? When we say and demand accountability from the politicians who are in office, from our neighbors, from our employers, from our friends, from ourselves, right? Like that surely justice must exist. And anyway, this poem is a prayer for the someday children. You who be descendant of both Haitian Revolution and survivor of Southern shackles, you who have the prayers of freedom fighters and joy lovers encamped about you, abolition baptized in your bloodstream. You, yes, you, my love, are the most tender miracle. A sunshine rainbow gathering glitter and the growing, our queer Black family, an unapologetic continuation of all that have come before, by bloodline and by choice. In spite of what we may not have received from those who did not have the capacity to live so freely, and especially because of ancestors who give love and such abundance, you, my dear, my most sweet and nurtured dream, the hope and healing of tomorrow and today, you generational curse breaker, nap taker, wide-eyed wonder maker, crocodile tear faker. Please remember always, always, you matter, my love. As your parents, we model what loving out loud looks like, so you will never have to fear the judgment of your own shadow, nor hide from the deepest and most true parts of your heart that yearn to love without boundary. We choose to break chains and live openly, honestly, and free of inhibition. We define what family means and craft space for our liberation so that you will not be afraid to express your truest self in all your glory, nor dim your light for those who don't understand. There is no room for shame here. Only questions that eventually yield answers, only love that holds us tight and demands a call for social justice as our given right. I pray you know a world without police violence, racism, homophobia, misogyny, transphobia, the kind of hate that attempts to stamp out our people. This is why we fight for all Black lives to matter. This is why we gave with all our might, with everything we had, to defund the police and reimagine a safer world for you to live in, to do all we could to ensure this place be safe harbor for you when you arrive. This is why we defunded the police and reimagined public safety. And try that we might to protect you, to hold you in our arms and on our backs. I know the world is waiting for you with a brick, but beloved, brilliant that you are, Some will attempt to cage your sun and call it night. Do not believe the lies, my dear, mon coeur, the very piece of me that lives and thrives and breathes and beams. Know that when they try us, and they will, remember this prayer and affirmation. Our love is stronger than their fear. Our love sets us free. Thank you all for your commitment to holding this country, this county accountable. Thank you for doing everything you can to make sure our current district attorney gets out of office, to make sure that we have people that will protect us and do the jobs that they say they will. There's no reason that 54% of our budget, our city budget, should go to the police, the same ones who are terrorizing our communities. So thank you for this time and space. My name is Yazmin Watkins. Come kiki with BLM Los Angeles. You guys know where to find us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really appreciate those words, that message. Love is love is love is love is love. And we know that light does conquer darkness and love does conquer indifference. Thank you all, gentle guests, for joining us on this event. We invite you to continue your support of the museum and its message and its mission. Thank you and have a wonderful evening and a wonderful year ahead. Bye-bye.